Pipeline transport is the long-distance transportation of a liquid or gas through a system of pipes. A pipeline, typically to a market area for consumption. The latest data from 2014 gives a total of slightly less than 2,175,000 miles of pipeline in 120 countries of the world. The United States had 65%, Russia had 8%, and Canada had 3%. Thus 75% of all pipeline were in these three countries. Pipeline and Gas Journal's worldwide survey figures indicate that 118,623 miles reflect pipelines. In various stages of construction, liquids and gases are transported in pipelines, and any chemically stable substance can be sent through a pipeline. Pipelines exist for the transport of crude and refined petroleum, fuels such as oil, natural gas and biofuels, and other fluids including sewage, slurry, water, beer, hot water or steam for shorter distances. Pipelines are useful for transporting water for drinking or irrigation over long distances when it needs to move over hills, or where canals or channels are poor choices due to considerations of evaporation, pollution, or environmental impact. Oil pipelines are made from steel or plastic tubes which are usually buried. The oil is moved through the pipelines by pump stations along the pipeline. Natural gas are pressurized into liquids known as natural gas liquids. Natural gas pipelines are constructed of carbon steel. Hydrogen pipeline transport is the transportation of hydrogen through a pipe. Pipelines are one of the safest ways of transporting materials as compared to road or rail. And hence in war, pipelines are often the target of military attacks. It is uncertain when the first crude oil pipeline was built. Credit for the development of pipeline transport is disputed, with competing claims for Vladimir Shukov and the Brano-Bull Company in the late 19th century, and the Oil Transport Association, which first constructed a 2-inch wrought iron pipeline over a 6-mile track from an oil field in Pennsylvania to a railroad station in Oil Creek in the 1860s. Pipelines are generally the most economical way to transport large quantities of oil, refined oil products or natural gas over land. For example, in 2014, pipeline transport of crude oil cost about $5 per barrel, while rail transport cost about $10 to $15 per barrel. Trucking has even higher costs due to the additional labor required. Employment on completed pipelines represents only 1% of that of the trucking industry. In the United States, 70% of crude oil and petroleum products are shipped by pipeline. In Canada, for natural gas and petroleum products, 97% are shipped by pipeline. Natural gas can be shipped by rail, truck or pipeline. Propane can be used as a fuel in oil fields to heat various facilities used by the oil drillers or equipment and trucks used in the oil patch. E.g., propane will convert from a gas to a liquid under light pressure, 100 psi, give or take depending on temperature, and is pumped into cars and trucks at less than 125 psi at retail stations. Pipelines and rail cars use about double that pressure to pump at 250 psi. The distance to ship propane to markets is much shorter, as thousands of natural gas processing plants are located in or near oil fields. Many Bakken Basin oil companies in North Dakota, Montana, Manitoba and Saskatchewan gas fields separate the NGLs in the field, allowing the drillers to sell propane directly to small wholesalers, eliminating the large refinery control of product and prices for propane or butane. The most recent major pipeline to start operating in North America is a Trans-Canada natural gas line going north across the Niagara region bridges with Marcellus shale gas from Pennsylvania and others tied in methane or natural gas sources into the Canadian province of Ontario as of the fall of 2012, supplying 16% of all the natural gas used in Ontario. This new US-supplied natural gas displaces the natural gas formerly shipped to Ontario from Western Canada in Alberta and Manitoba, thus dropping the government-regulated pipeline shipping charges because of the significantly shorter distance from gas source to consumer. To avoid delays and US government regulation, Many small, medium and large oil producers in North Dakota have decided to run an oil pipeline north to Canada. To meet up with a Canadian oil pipeline shipping oil from west to east, this allows the Bakken Basin and Three Forks oil producers to get higher negotiated prices for their oil because they will not be restricted to just one wholesale market in the U.S. The distance from the biggest oil patch in North Dakota, in Williston, North Dakota, is only about 85 miles or 137 kilometers to the Canada-US border and Manitoba. Mutual funds and joint ventures are big investors in new oil and gas pipelines. In the fall of 2012, the US began exporting propane to Europe, known as LPG, as wholesale prices there are much higher than in North America. Additionally, a pipeline is currently being constructed F.